Hey everybody, I am Bon and Bao, and you are tuning into Positivity and Pivots, where we're showcasing incredible example of business resilience in time of crisis. This week we are covering the CPG industry, but I want to remind everybody that no matter what industry you are from, you are in, please encourage people to submit your stories. And I want to give a huge thank you to SAP and Quantum Metric for partnering with us on this. The story of COVID-19's impact on consumer packaged goods goes much deeper than just a run on toilet paper. In the first weeks of this crisis, I spoke with many of the leaders and, quite frankly, friends of mine in the CPG space. It made me remember why I love these people so much, and I want to thank all of you for the work that you do. They all said the same thing. They said this is truly a test of resilience. Every world leader called them. Every world leader said the same thing: keep delivering water, food, supplies, which meant that they had to figure out how to produce at surge levels, purchase raw materials at quantities they had never before, social distance their supply chains, and most important, inspire and support their frontline workers. The complexity of this task on a global level is so vast, and the timeline was immediate. In short, the CPG manufacturers have become key to overcoming this crisis, as they produce many of the essential items that we rely on for our health and well-being. Across the globe, we have suddenly realized the importance of our retail workers in providing access to these goods and how quickly they have become the force to help us fight against this virus. But what's coming next will be interesting for the CPG brands. A post-COVID-19 recession could see a 40 to 50% decline in discretionary spending. And while many of these companies have survived the initial shock, it is now time for us to look at how these organizations will thrive. One way to prepare is perhaps for us to look back at the lessons learned from the 2008 recession. From my own experience, I know that the CPG industry is much more resistant than most, but the long-term survival of many brands will depend on having a maniacal obsession with their consumer, and more importantly, the changing of that consumer behavior. After all, more than 40 million Americans are being furloughed or laid off. Consumers are short on money, but even more, they're short on confidence and will be fast becoming overly concerned with their personal health and their safety. And how will this play out, and how will we respond? In 2008, we saw consumers cut back on impulse purchases. They began to look for deals and promotions. Shoppers migrated to stores where they could get the most value for their money. And in terms of categories, consumers switched to value packs, private labels, store brands, and sought affordable luxuries. But the world has changed a lot in 12 years. And now with online retail, which I'm sure many of you participate in, delivery has grown significantly. And some of the brands have really benefited from their shift to e-commerce, which I was so heavily focused on when I was at Mondelez. But at the same time, while they're seeing less significant impact, this is where the next generation of consumers are today. But having a strong e-commerce presence is not going to be the total answer. It's really time for us to hear from the leaders and understand how they're looking ahead for the new normal. More important, how they're taking a long look at their global business, their portfolio of products, their categories, decide whether to wait for the behavior to bounce back, or are there opportunities to use marketing promotion to maintain and stabilize growth. The one thing I know is, having spent so much time of my career with inside of large CPGs, is that this will be about operational model, strategic vision, and more important, what lessons will actually stick. Perhaps for us, it's time to change, and maybe we should turn the show's name into Positivity, Pivots, and Planning. But with that, I want to open up the show, and as always, we are going to start with our a resident data expert, Tamara, who's going to give us just a top line of the data that she's seeing currently in the CPG space. Tamara, welcome as always, and thank you so much.
Thank you. So with the big pivots that happened, BOPIS, which is buy online, pick up in store, has had a massive shift. The older age population has shifted very quickly to BOPIS, especially for grocery shopping, and the other consumers are ramping up, and the businesses have to kind of follow suit. So what I have today is some information about BOPIS that I think will be really, really helpful. And what the challenge is impulse buying. when it comes to picking up and buying online. And so with the digital presence, there have been a few major changes that I think impact the CPG marketplace. The first one is eating at home. That's up 58% according to a survey. Revenue from online is up 300%. And those who have bought in a grocery store and picked up at the curb now say at a 97% level that they will probably do that again. It has not been a perfect experience, mind you. Here's the challenge. The average order value for grocery carts is down, as well as the way that we navigate to the things that we want is through search, which means we are going for the things we already know about, less than the things that we don't know about. So when you really look at what happened to the shopping carts, when you go from buying online and having it shipped to you, if you assume it's a $100 cart, let's just say, when you get to buying on your desktop and picking up in store, it is now a $68 cart. That means we have lost value in the cart. When we use a mobile phone, it goes down to $61. This is the challenge of impulse buying and how to merchandise in this new world. So that's the data that I have, and it comes from the Quantum Metric data set. We help companies make digital products better, faster. And that, I believe, is one of the most important things that we're going to need to see pivot on in the future. Back to you, Bonin.
Thank you, Tamara. I think it's interesting. One of the things when we took over, we took over e-commerce, big shout out to Cindy Chen. I know she's out there. Was we really looked at, is there a way for us to drive impulse online? And if some of you have seen a little bit of the stuff that Box did, we created kind of an impulse. How do we fill the box and do kind of deals and offers? But I definitely think that impulse component is going to be important to understand how that's going to change. And to speak of impulse, we have somebody who, he's actually very funny, so be careful. I used to think I was telling the jokes, but apparently it's Jeff Leonard is up, actually. Sorry about that, guys. Hey, Jeff, how are you? So just to give everybody a quick background, Jeff is the VP of strategy from the National Association of Convenience Stores. I've had a chance to speak at their event. They represent really almost, I think, 50% of the total marketplace. And so really a voice of the consumer as well as of the retailer. And so, Jeff, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you're seeing overall?
Well, your introduction was great just in looking at the setup here. I think CPG is having its moment because when you look at where we've gone in terms of trends, 5 years ago was the first time that restaurant sales surpassed grocery sales. And obviously all that's changed with the new dynamics. But in terms of convenience stores, I like to look at three numbers in terms of talking about the industry, and that's part of my job. And also setting up partnerships and looking at how can 1 + 1 be more than 2 in terms of how do we work with other groups. And three numbers that best communicate the convenience store industry. And these numbers obviously have changed within the last 2 months. First number is 165 million. That's the number of transactions that we conduct on a daily basis. 40 million at the pump, 125 million inside the store. Sometimes people are doing both. Sometimes they're coming inside the store 3 times. So on average, half of the US comes to our stores every day. Number two, 34% of retail stores. If you look at Nielsen numbers, excluding restaurants, convenience stores are 34% of retail. That number may change up or down depending upon how we get through this latest dynamic with COVID. Third number is something you touched upon, and that's the impulse. 83% of the items that are sold in convenience stores are impulse items, something that is immediate consumption, will go in somebody's mouth within the hour, if not get destroyed as they walk to that car. It's immediate consumption. And all those dynamics have shifted over the last 2 months.
What, if you really step back and look, what are your members projecting in terms of, well, first you talked a little bit about, when we spoke about some of the changes that they're making. So given those numbers and given the consumer behavior shift, what are convenience stores doing to react?
Well, if you look at one of the reasons why they are deemed essential businesses, just one of the reasons,
right.
Because of the essential items they sell. Convenience stores sell 80% of the gas in the country. They are the site of 1/3 of the ATMs in the country. They sell 25% of their in-store sales are around food service, restaurant type food. All of those things have been significantly curtailed by COVID pandemic and concerns for safety and comfort, et cetera. So they've had to do this massive pivot where everything has gone from the future is the restaurant, the future is fuel. Fuel sales are down about 50%. They've come back a little bit. But the whole definition of convenience has changed. It used to be immediate consumption. Now it's around comfort. It's around safety. And right now, there's a massive pivot at convenience looking at how do we become hunter-gatherers? How do we just heard about how grocery per ticket transactions are down slightly. At convenience stores, they're up. Because the idea is how can you go in, get as much as you can per visit? You're not going there for a candy bar. You're going there for a bunch of candy bars or a bunch of items. How do you get bulk items? And the real thing that's happening right now is we had one retailer say, you know, if you look at us, we've had all these evolutions through convenience. Convenience used to be about hours of operation. It was also about location. It was also about one-stop shopping. And we've almost gone back 5 decades in how do we define what a convenience store is. Now it's a mini mart. It looks like a mini grocery store. And we are selling pantry items as much as anything. It's gone from really want to need in terms of what you see in convenience stores now.
You talked also when we spoke, I found it fascinating. You said that, you know, the convenience store also pivoted around kind of the changing in technology, and what you see is now going to be the new pivot around the change, what technology they're going to pivot around now.
Yeah, and when you look at, there's a couple different quotes. Mark Twain supposedly said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So there's a lot of things that we're seeing right now have been around for 100, 150 years. But if you look at the broad evolution, now this is an overgeneralization, but the whole idea of convenience started in the 1870s with Montgomery Ward with the general interest mail order. And it expanded from there with pizza delivery. Queen Margarita, you can look it up, had the first pizza and they named it after her. And guess what that one is now. So it was all about delivery to the home. And also, you had the milkman back then. And then it evolved into the convenience associated with the vehicle. So it was around car hops. Car hops happened around the 1920s. That's now considered basically curbside. You had pickup sacks that started at White Castle in the 20s also. You had things like Photomat. And if anybody's old, they remember Photomat came and went. And that was about you drop off your film. I'm not going to explain what film is, but you dropped off your film. And then like 2 days later, you came back and you picked up your processed film or your slides. And I'm not going to explain the slides either. But all these conveniences were all around the car. And then what we've seen about the last decade is we've seen the convenience has all been about the device. It's been about that thing in your hand that never leaves your hand. It's about the App Store. It's about Amazon Go using for cashierless payments. And I think that's really going to drive what we're going to see in retail over the next few years, because you look at things like contactless, people don't want to touch pens, they don't want to touch pen pads and things like that. All on your phone, prepay, you go. And you're going to see more of that. I can't remember the last time I used cash.
It's interesting because
it's short term, but they're all still going to be long term.
No, this is going to be long-term behavior change. I mean, I went to the store, I was telling you, and I'm in the deli, and I remember in the beginning, there's a pen, I don't want to touch it, I don't know. I started bringing my own pen so I could sign the receipt. Then we got the glove game going, but still I'm worried about touching the keypad. And then a guy was right before me and just tapped with his credit card. And I came home that night and was like, what am I doing? Called every single credit card and said, send me that tap card. Like, if you're not that tap card, I will not be using you. And so I think that this is going to be a behavior around contactless. You know, we have a great speaker who's going to talk about that. I'm going to ask one last question, which is, what are your members forecasting? Is this coming back in 2020? Is this coming back September? Is it, I mean, what when they look long-term, what are they thinking?
Well, they're trying to pivot as much as they can to stay in business, but I'll tell you that two things they're looking at. One is what will ultimately happen with all the other retailers. You know, you've seen Neiman Marcus having its challenges, all these others. There's going to be a massive amount of retail that will come available. And convenience stores are often thought of as a place to go to other places. So the big challenge is if people aren't going to the mall, they're not stopping on the convenience store on the way to the mall. So big opportunities and challenges there. Will CPG companies look at that as a depot to deliver straight to the customer? But I think your next speaker will answer that question as well as I can, because the two things that we're looking at is how will the commuter come back? Will it be 1 day, 3 days, 5 days a week? And more important, what will that routine be? How long will it take to establish that routine? Will they set aside the gas purchase? Will they come inside that store, get that breakfast sandwich, have that conversation? Or is it going to be this new normal where I just will go when I absolutely need something, not, hey, I just want to go inside and have that indulgent item that you had talked about earlier?
Jeff, it was such a pleasure getting to know you and hearing you speak here. Thank you so much. And I'm going to take away the milkman. And I know that our OREO guests are going to be happy that might be part of the new normal. Thank you so much, Jeff. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring up Matt really quickly. Hello, Matt. How are you? Why don't you tell the world who you are and what you do, since Jeff kind of, teed you up, I guess, a little.
He did. Hey, Bonin, thanks so much for having me. And Jeff, I have to confess that I have greatly contributed to the immediate consumption of the impulse buy between the convenience store and the car over the years. So it's good to know I have an influence on the industry. I'm with SAP, and I'm privileged to lead our global efforts supporting customers in the retail, wholesale distribution, consumer products, and life science business. And along the way, we have the great honor of working with many of the largest and most well-known brands in the world, but also some of the newest and fastest growing companies in the world as well. And what they have in common is they're both experiencing a time where the consumer is changing their behavior rapidly and setting new rules. So both of these companies, these types of companies, regardless of the position they occupy in the market, they have to respond in the right manner to be able to take advantage of that opportunity going forward.
And so when you're talking to the industry heads, which I find fascinating that you guys, we couldn't have found a better partner because you guys sit at the epicenter of so many industries. And it's been fascinating to hear the leaders from those different industry practices talk, because you guys are on the phone with the leaders in those industries. So tell me, what are you hearing from the industry?
Well, we're hearing all across our customer relationships a common theme, which is help us to focus on our strengths. Help us to really understand where the consumer is going and what we can do to help reinforce our brand promise, in many cases, which is incredibly strong and incredibly well known to those consumers. How do we focus on our investments to accelerate our position in the marketplace? We also work with some who are having challenges right now. And for those companies, it's really all about how can we help them identify an opportunity to make an aggressive pivot to a new business model. But what I think we're finding in common is both companies are saying they have the ability and need to really focus on a common digital infrastructure to really understand where to go with that strategy. And then they're really focusing on speed and agility to execute that strategy moving forward. So they can be there in the moment, which is most important to that consumer as she's making that purchase decision.
And we talked a lot about agility, and I think you said agility ability, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. But are you seeing them able to pivot fast, or are they struggling through it, or do they not have a choice?
Well, they don't have a choice, that's for sure. And I think it gets to organizational DNA, to be honest with you, in terms of how these companies are really set up to innovate and succeed over the years. And what we're finding is each successive iteration and innovation really drives the next one, right? So it's really important to have that common language internally about how you innovate. The companies that are continuing to put the consumer at the center of their focus are the ones that are going to survive and thrive going forward.
So when we talked, you talked about curves and models. And so talk to us a little bit about those kind of curves and those discussions you guys are having.
Right. So we're also trying to focus and understand what the recovery shape is going to look like. So there's lots of talk out there about, is it a V-shaped recovery, which implies it's much more quick? Is it a U-shaped recovery, which might be a little bit lagging behind the V? Or is it a W or some other esoteric shape? But the conversations we're having with our customers are about not only can we help them understand what that might look like, but how can we effectively help them plan for that? So we're having a lot of conversations about using planning solutions and planning technologies to really focus on having the organization to be ready for the recovery, no matter what shape that is, because that's a very complex type of solution and challenge. If you can relate to that around how do you actually plan for a different model? How then do you cascade that plan throughout your entire organization with that customer at the center to deliver on that brand expectation at the right time?
Right, I agree. What's the most interesting thing that you've seen in terms of an adjustment, a change, or?
I think there's a couple examples I would say. The first is we're seeing a lot of pivot to adjacency. So in the food business, for example, we're seeing companies that made a great living and a great brand serving institutions or cruise ships or other types of distribution models, pivoting, and you're starting to see some of those brands now show up at retail, right, in a grocery store or a mass hypermarket kind of thing. So I think there's an adjacency around what can I do with this strength with these great food products and get them into a different channel. We're also seeing a lot of innovation specifically around the trade promotion area between the CPG manufacturer and the different segmentation models. There's different focuses around how you view a particular category in a recovery, how that same category is viewed in different parts of the country as different parts of the country are experiencing various levels of recovery. And then what that means for different complexities around, say, center store versus fresh or the perimeter of the store. All those things are different data points that really drive a different outcome and a different plan and a different supply chain as a result.
Generally, I get a sense that there's a huge feeling, though, of optimism out there. Are you picking that up too?
I think so. I think that we are cautiously optimistic. Right. I think we're seeing a lot of pent up demand out there, and you're seeing a lot of things. Really, customers really want to get back to normal as soon as possible. My family, we've had a local milkman here in the Seattle area for quite some time, so that's not been disrupted, and it's maybe a good segue for our next guests. But we're still holding on to that. We're still holding on to that local milkman and counting on those deliveries every week.
Right. Well, Matt, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And I think that, again, this milkman theme, somebody needs to tee up Kellogg's, which is coming up next. I guess that's my job. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. And it's just interesting, I think, as we model out what the future is going to look like, how do you then prepare plans no matter which one of those models actually come to fruition? I think that's where really kind of the real challenge is going to be. Thank you, Matt. Okay, Jasmine, let's bring up Justin and Brian. There you go. How are you guys? So how do you want me to do this? First of all, everybody, you guys, I've had a chance to work with these gentlemen, and I'm very excited to have them on here. And, it's my old alma mater. But I'm more excited because not only were they one of the early submissions, but what they did was remarkable. And to be quite frank, I don't think it never would have happened. I know when I was there, not because of me, but just the organization has changed so rapidly. Do you want me to show the work for it? Why don't you talk about it, tee it up, and then I'll show. How's that?
Sure. Yeah. It's good to be here, Bonin. We miss you. So, and it's good to talk about your favorite brand of all time.
Right.
So, yeah. What was that?
Don't tell Pepsi.
I won't. Yeah, I'll kind of tee it up here. So, OREO as a brand, it's all around. It's all about creating playful connection, right? It's that brand that you grew up twisting, licking, and dunking, and it was about those moments with your family. And so when this crisis hit, I think it was really an opportunity for us as a brand to lean even more into our purpose as a brand and really spread optimism, lift the human spirit. And one of the things that we found really inspiring was all the examples of people that were finding fun, innovative ways to connect with those they loved, whether it's in their house as they're sheltering in place or from a distance. And so that really inspired a new creative idea under our platform, Stay Playful, and really, saying, reinforcing the message, the important message of stay home, but also stay playful. And so you can go ahead and run the clip on it, and we can talk a bit more about it.
All right, I am running the clip right now. Okay, I believe this is the clip.
Mom used to say, go out and play, but inside's the place we gon' play today. Not just the little ones, grown-ups too. Checking the world with a different view. Now it's a virtual thing that's done. Party online, now that's the...
Yeah, we couldn't see that button. I'm not sure if everyone else could.
What? Could you see it?
No, we couldn't see it, but at least folks could hear the rap tune.
Justin can, there it is. Now it's coming out.
Here we go.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
Sorry. We practice this.
Mom used to say, go out and play, but inside's the place we gon' play today. Not just the little ones, grown-ups too. Checking the world with a different view. Now it's a virtual thing that's done. Party online, now that's the real fun. Distance could never put an end to the vibe. We're coming together while staying inside. Let's stay connected, one with the flow. Let's stay playful. OREO.
Love it. Love it.
So we're actually this week we're launching an evolution of that. You know, as the situation continues to evolve and states are now reopening, we're evolving with that. You know, and so it's really around how can we inspire people to keep that playful spirit alive and not forget what we learned. You know, and keep creating these deeper connections, albeit in a different way. So
Well, and Justin's being a little modest here. This certainly traveled more than just in the US. We had versions of this in India, in the UK. We had a really big splash this made in Brazil, where the #1 show in Brazil right now is Big Brother of all shows. And they reached out to us and asked if we'd be willing, to air it as part of their finale, which they knew was going to be a big show there, because they just felt like it was really what people were looking for. And we didn't really have the rights for all those clips, because it was global digital rights only. So we got most, but to show sort of how our teams have come together around this, one of our guys in Brazil, there was a clip missing we couldn't get the rights to. So the night before it was due, he shot it himself with his own wife and kids. They spliced it into the spot, and then that's what ended up airing on Big Brother Brazil's finale. So it was great to see.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, just when I opened up, I talked a little bit. We look at a lot of conversation is talking about how are brands doing what they're doing, and it's a lot of US centric. But the thing from when I speak to friends like you that are in the global point of view is you guys have to deal with this in every single country, and every single country is different. Every single country is, they all, I guess, it's the same conceptually, but you guys are being forced to move the organization at lightning speed that you've never had. I mean, what have you learned about how the organization has changed and kind of coalesced around this?
Yeah, no, it's good, because we used our matrix org a lot as an excuse on why we didn't want to say no to stuff, or why we couldn't move fast. And now that we've had to and proven that we can, I think it's shown a lot of us how fast things can really move. Despite our structure, despite the layers and the levels, I think we used, China was our blueprint. I think that I'm sure a lot of companies experienced that now that they're moving to reopening. But what they saw right away, and what consumers were telling us in early studies, was they were making stuff at home, and they wanted recipes, and they wanted ideas, and they wanted things to occupy their kids, and things that they could do with stuff that was already on hand. And we had a database of content, but we don't always delve into it. And so we did a quick refresh, found some of the easiest, best performing stuff. And I think, Justin, you might have even grabbed from a couple other regions that we had, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think the recipe learnings were huge for us from China, right? And it made a lot of sense. People are at home, they're going to be wanting to treat their kids. Making recipes is one way to do that. So, given it worked in China, we actually were able to pull content from Latin America. They'd worked with Tasty platform, and we took a look at it. We said, there's no reason why this can't work brilliantly. We were able to pull it and have it on air here.
Right. So Brian, you talked when we spoke a little bit about how many processes are just having to be adjusted as a result of this, and you talked a little bit about R&D. Just talk to us about kind of what you're seeing and the change in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, and sure, everybody has their frontline employees first and foremost in their minds, and if we can't do it, we got to be able to do it safely. And we were worried. A lot of these guys, they have to be on site, and they have to be, or we thought they had to be on site and doing stuff hands-on. One of my R&D guys did a virtual tasting with his team this week, where they had samples sent to each house. They compared notes on a video call, and the project was able to move forward, where normally you have to be all in the plant, all next to the production line, all standing there. And I think, Justin, you guys even had an example of something moving forward through video that normally wouldn't happen, right?
Oh yeah, I mean we are actually it's impressive. Our research and development team have figured out a way to do virtual trials, which I mean people would laugh you out of the room if you ever suggested doing a virtual trial on a new product. And they have figured out, you know, how they can work through it with the folks in our manufacturing facilities, which is just amazing. I mean, it's amazing the passion and effort they're putting into keeping things moving and finding, you know, novel solutions.
You know, I have to ask one question, because with all the change, I think it's created more efficient companies. It's, you know, different ways to do things. How much of it sticks? How much of it does it? Does any of it stick? Is it valuable to keep any of it? Like, where's your heads at?
I certainly hope a lot of it sticks. I mean, I think one of the things that we've experienced is the value of speed. You know, it's like, I talked to my team early on when we were working on the new creative. It's like, you know, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. You know, time is of the essence. We got to move. And I've seen that across the organization, just people being much more focused, more decisive. You know, meetings that used to take 4 hours, we're figuring out a way to do them in an hour. You know, so I think it's all, I think as an organization, we're coming together and figuring out ways that this situation is forcing us to figure out ways to work smarter. And we have to carry those forward. I think it's one of the best things that we can learn kind of coming out of this crisis.
Yeah, and for me, first of all, I hope I never have to make the commute to Jersey again. There's no reason for me to be out in East Hanover. But no, but seriously, it's and Justin and I have talked about this. We're a pretty, and you remember this, Brian. We were always a pretty polite culture and wanted to collaborate almost to the point of exhaustion. And I think we've gotten over that now. We now know where to draw the line of collaborating versus dragging your feet. And I don't think we were good at that before this. And now we've been forced into a sense of efficiency. I think it's going to stick. I really hope it does. And if not, there's going to have to be folks like us who hold us to it, saying, guys, we did it. There's no reason we got to go back to the old way.
Right. Yeah, but sometimes organizational memory is short, so I hope not, because I think that this has really created much more competitive potential companies. But even more than that, I think it's really tested individuals, and that's what I've heard a lot. It was like that. Those first 2 weekends were really like, it was almost like, of course, you're happy that there's other people out there, but more you're just like commiserating with everybody. Okay, what is this going to mean? And I know it's changed a lot of people. So let me just ask this last question. As leaders, what have you learned and how have you changed?
Yeah, sorry, bro.
Go ahead, JP. No, go ahead.
Yeah, it was one of the things you know, it's always important, right? But like, is to lead with clarity and with focus. And it's more important than ever in a crisis. And I think that's what, especially when folks have so much anxiety and so much worry as they're juggling, you know, a totally new reality at home. It's like, I think we have to lead with that level of clarity and focus. So they're not worried about the job, or we're trying to remove as much worry about the job as possible. And I think a lot of that, it comes through like just really clear communication, frankly, empathy. I mean, I would say, you know, everyone's processing this differently. And I think checking in with people, you know, really understanding how they're doing and being vulnerable as a leader, like showing, you know, we're not always in a great place. And so I think just creating an environment that people feel really comfortable is how we kind of bring our best every day.
What I've loved is the sort of the merging of the work and personal personas. Some leaders are better than others at keeping those lines either separate if that's their intention, or blending them if that's the type of leader that they want to be. I love this blending of seeing some of the best performing stuff with my team and with the Mondelez leadership team has been everyone bringing their pets and you know, pictures of their pets on calls or bringing them on camera and acknowledging the days when it's hard. And before you just kind of, you power through, and it's always this sense of rah, rah, go, go. But we've had a couple instances where you got to acknowledge, man, I got it. It's a rough day. Let's take a pause. We'll come back to this at another time. And I think that's, for me, that's been one of the hardest things to do. I'm always sort of that upbeat, positive guy, but acknowledging those downbeats so the upbeats can come, I think is something I'm going to carry with me.
I love it. Well, Justin, Brian, thank you guys so much for joining us, and it's always a pleasure. And I'm excited, and I am still a big avid OREO buyer. So you got me. Although I didn't make it into the rap song, which I don't know if how I feel good or bad. Anyway, let's bring up our next guest. Gail, how are you? You are great. No, that's my best Tony the Tiger.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
No, I'm excited. So just so everybody knows, I've known Gail for a while, but she didn't know this. And when we started talking in preparation for this, I told her that I worked on the Kellogg business, and I worked on the 100th anniversary of Kellogg. And I used to make my commute to Battle Creek by way of Kalamazoo. And I've heard all the songs and sat in the theater, and I have cereal boxes with my face on it. And so
awesome.
It's such an amazing brand. And it means so much to, the world, and I think to the families of the world. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do?
Sure. I'm the CMO of Kellogg North America, and I oversee experience planning, field shopper marketing, media and marketing operations, packaging design, and our call center, consumer affairs, and work closely across all brand marketing organization.
And you are a mom, and you are a teacher now, and you're
yes.
I'm
a mom, and I'm a teacher, and I'm a cook. I've rediscovered my passion for cooking, which I always had, but frankly didn't have much time for. So we were joking, I've cooked more family dinners in the last 6-8 weeks than I probably did during my children's, who are now in college, their childhood.
That's great. So we were talking, and you just talked a little bit about, it's kind of touching on what Brian closed in on, but the experience that you've had kind of just with your team, kind of culture, just talk a little bit about that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think what this new way of working has brought out is this focus on the humanity and our personal lives in a way that really wasn't present. So we would, potentially go out for drinks or connect during offsites and things like that. But now, you get to see your coworkers, so to speak, their children, their pets, their family members, their significant others. Meetings get interrupted. You're seeing people at home, like you're seeing my home office, and you start to realize that there's just a whole lot of humanity that you probably missed in the office setting. And I'm hoping that will continue. We've really gotten to know people a lot better, and actually let people sort of show off. In our company, we're doing a lot of virtual connects like everyone else. We do things like cooking or 2 truths and a lie, and really kind of getting to know people on a personal level. And then we have our meetings. So it's sort of this blending, as they were saying, of kind of work and home life together.
You were saying you did like bring who you're cohabitating with, and people brought like goldfish. And,
yes, exactly. And their dogs and their cats and their family members. And, we had new parents who got to show off their kids, and, it was fun.
Right. And I think it's interesting. I never thought about that, but you speak to your coworkers a lot, but you don't ever really know really that much about their actual life at home, because you're not seeing it. You're not, unless you guys are doing dinners together, stuff like that, but usually you don't. And so, and that's,
I mean, even in the days when we were doing the dinners together, it's sort of an abstract concept. Like my husband, my significant other, we would talk about them, but you wouldn't really see them. Now we were actually bringing them into the meetings and the Skype calls. So, just getting to know people on a more personal level.
Right. So you guys, big creative powerhouse, you used a term, which I thought was interesting. I won't take it from you, but you said that all of that had to shift dramatically, and kind of talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, at the scale in which we are all putting messaging in the marketplace, I talk about it as the creative supply chain. And the minute we all moved to shelter in place, and that began to take root and take hold across the country, we realized that we just had to change the way we were working. At a very practical level, we were involved in sporting and experiential events that obviously were no longer happening right away. And the way we produce content had to change. We couldn't do live shoots. If we could do product shots, that was handled very differently. So we pretty much, stopped everything in place and took a step back and really thought about what's important, what kind of messages are relevant and helpful to people in these times, and what's the best way to speak to consumers, and then how do we produce things. And we've had this accelerated learning process. We heard a little bit about what's going on at Mondelez, and in a similar fashion, we historically would not put, we would work for months and months and months if we were going to put a new TV creative in the marketplace. About a month ago, our CEO really wanted to give a heartfelt thanks to the essential workers that are putting food on America's table. So whether it be the farmers or the truckers or the grocery cashiers, we had this idea, and from idea to in-market execution is called breakfast as usual. It was a 7-day process. That would have been unheard of, or was unheard of in the past. So, and it's not that everything we expect to happen that quickly, but the point is it can, and so we can be really relevant in real time to consumers.
So again, it's just the same question. How many of the behaviors that have changed, that you've changed, what are your thoughts on? Are they going to stick? Are they going to go? Are they good? Are they?
I do think it'll stick to a certain extent. I really do, because there were a lot of reasons why we couldn't do it that way before. So obviously it was possible. We were able to turn on a dime in real time, but there were a lot of sort of organizational or cultural, and this would be the case at any big company that said, no, we need to, review that. Then I have to review it with my manager, and my manager then has to review it, and they need to review it with their manager, and so forth. And so we really just collapsed all that. And we realized that with great brands, strong brand foundations, phenomenal agency partners, we didn't need to necessarily go through painstaking step after step after step. So I think it's been liberating for people and energizing to be able to really think about how to be relevant in real time, and not just in social posts, but to truly impact consumer behavior. So
right.
I think it'll stick.
I hope, and I think you're right, truly impacting consumer behavior and doing something based on where the consumer really is at,
Yeah.
So let me ask, so you said shopper marketing. I mean, so you work with your retail partners all the time. Like, what are you guys thinking about the consumer? Like, what are some consumer behavior changes that you?
Well, I mean, immediately, like many food manufacturers, we saw people stock up on our beloved products. They're shelf stable, they're delicious, they're trusted, they're things people really enjoy eating. And once they had all this food in their house, we're thinking about, they're no longer going out, so they're eating a lot more of it, and they're doing different things. I mean, we were really recognizing that, people might be having cereal for dinner, and that's great. I mean, that was a behavior that happened before, but now we were celebrating that because, you know what, why not, And so we were able to look at what people were doing in their free time. We did some work around pantry boredom busters. So helping people have fun with Fruit Loops and using them to help their kids sort color or make jewelry or do crafts or create Rice Krispie treats, which the whole family can do, really encouraging like Zoom cooking with your family, making Eggo sandwiches or Eggo, making fun art for breakfast with your Eggo. So a lot of recognition about how people were consuming our food. We didn't need to help them get it in the house. It was already in the house. So really what they were doing with it once it was there.
And then let me ask, what other innovations do you think you guys have to kind of think about as does contactless mean something to you, or pack size is going to change? Like what are your thoughts there?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure, I'm certain all of that will change. I think the really important thing is to be flexible, agile, and follow the consumer. I mean, we're learning day by day what this means for not only our business, but our consumers, our grocery partners, et cetera. And just being flexible and being a lot more nimble about how we're responding to it. So I think all of those things are being looked at right now, and we're going to see quite a few changes. To your point, a lot of these things, contactless payments, the surge into online retail, that was happening in other verticals, but now we've got all these first-time buyers that are trying online shopping. That barrier has been removed. Will they go back? I think they will mix and go back, but we have a lot of new consumers that are buying our products online, and they can look and feel very different.
Right. And so let me ask, in terms of all this change, as a leader, I'm very fascinated. What changes have you seen or in yourself, and what different approaches have you had to take, or?
I mean, we talk a lot about checking in, the humanity of just making sure people are doing okay. Our leadership is very focused on the safety and wellness of all of our employees and teammates. For me, as somebody who works in the marketing function, I carry that through by having more frequent touch bases, really understanding, frankly, what some of the challenges people are going through that may or may not have anything to do with work. When you're balancing homeschooling and deadlines, there's a lot. So really stepping in to be more hands-on that way. I do see, and we've convened a lot more frequent meeting with our agency partners. So at Kellogg, I've started something called 5 and 15, where every night, usually around 5 o'clock, we have this ideation session, say what happened today and what can we do about it tomorrow. We're actually organizing our work in meetings now by things we can do tomorrow,
Right.
things we can do next week, things we can do over time. So using that time as a way to get work into the marketplace, whereas before every idea was created with the same sort of almost time element and schedule. Now it's, what can we do today? What can we do tomorrow, next week, and next month?
Right. Is there any planning past a month? Just curious.
Oh yeah, sure, of course. Yes, absolutely.
No, I just don't know if we're thinking like, what does December look like?
Well, I think what's interesting is we're doing both at the same time. So we're absolutely thinking about the future and what that looks like in the future being, a couple of months. And like everybody, we're watching live sports and what's going to happen there. What's happening with TV production was halted as well. We're big TV advertisers as well. So we're absolutely watching what's happening in the future. But I think the key is to be nimble today and flexible in the future, not lock ourselves into too many scenarios, because I don't think anybody has a crystal ball.
Well, I love it. I think you're so right. I mean, I wish somebody had a crystal ball, but that person. Yeah.
You don't necessarily need one as long as you're able to be agile and nimble. I think that's really one of the behaviors that is going to stick. And it's not that we weren't before, but to the level and degree of which it's required now is a new level, in my opinion. And you heard a little bit about the team before me talk about it.
Right. No. I think that, to your point, the agility component is really what's going to be the question. Is those that are able to keep that agility are going to, and we've heard about it and talked about it for the first time. I think it's been a true test, but surprising. I shared this the last show, but I read a meme and it said, who moved digital transformation faster, the CEO, the CMO, or COVID-19? And so surprisingly, companies that you were always, they're so slow, we're like, pew, and they kind of like made it happen. So
I think those of us that have spent a very long time, like you and me, in the digital transformation space, it has been remarkable to see that overnight those things, consumer behavior changed that quickly. So it's been exciting. It's an exciting time to be in marketing.
Right. Well, Gail, it's exciting to hear you talk. You were getting a lot of hearts and claps and light bulbs. So thank you so much and enjoy your evening.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you, Gail. No, come on. I appreciate your kindness. Okay, we are in the last stretch. 2 more guests, and I always promise you I will get you out to clap, at least on the East Coast. So let's jump right into Elias. Elias, tell us who you are. Tell us what you do. Tell us what background that is.
This is my beloved New York City.
Right.
New York. Bonin, thanks for having me. It's good to see you. Elias Guerra, I'm the founder and CEO of Popwallet. We're a marketing platform. We enable brands to leverage those pre-installed mobile wallets like Apple Wallet and Google Pay, really as an engagement channel to deliver things like dynamic coupons and offers, loyalty gift cards, tickets. It's really these contactless consumer experiences that the mobile wallet really makes a lot of sense for.
Right. And so you guys just recently, so first of all, contactless, it's like, we met a while ago, and you're always wondering, when is the time? When is the time? Am I early? Am I late? And it's kind of like, now I don't think that, so what kind of adoption are you just seeing right now? I mean, and should retailers, small and big, CPG manufacturers, small and big, be thinking about kind of the contactless solutions as part of their marketing mix? I mean, because I know we're thinking about like tapping credit card, but what you're doing is literally giving them deals, offers, and a relationship that changes in real time in that wallet.
Yeah, retailers should be thinking about contactless as they're thinking about their consumer needs. We've seen a surge in activity, and it's interesting, we have known each other for a while, and we've been in this space for a while. And here in the United States, things have been a little bit slow, right? I mean, using a phone to pay for something or transact in other markets, that's kind of how it's been happening, and we've been catching up here in America. And MasterCard just came out with some really interesting data. I think it was last week that now over half of Americans are using contactless to pay for things. And so we're seeing this huge surge in interest in these, and really what's driving it, when you talk about the shifting consumer needs, it's this pivot to safety, right? And you touched on it earlier. What's your own experience when you go into a store? You don't really want to touch anything, right? You don't want to touch that keypad. You certainly don't want to hand over the dirty cash or the plastic credit card or your loyalty or gift card or that paper coupon. And so the ability for a consumer to interact with that brand or the retailer where the brand is being sold in a touchless way, I think is paramount. So we're seeing a lot of shifting consumer demand there, and the marketers really trying to learn more about how to deliver this.
All right. Well, we're glad you're on that case. Hey, 1 minute, tell us what you did, because you worked with a wonderful company, and I'm very proud to have heard and seen what you did. So let's just share that real quick.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. So our client Mars and their brand Snickers, these are challenging times, of course, and they want to do something, a gesture of goodwill for the community. And so they're giving away 1 million Snickers. You can actually go to sendasnickersfromhome.com and you can see this in action. But these are gift cards. These are gift cards that people can share with essential workers, the nurses, the firemen, the people on the front lines who are keeping us going through all of this. Maybe they could use a little bit of good cheer. And so this program, you can send them a Snickers. They can save it to their mobile wallet, go into any one of 5,000 Walmarts here in the US, and in a safe, contactless way, get their Snickers redeemed straight from their mobile wallet.
I love it. Well, Elias, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Thank you so much. The one thing I would say is, we have a company that's in the foundry with you that also does text messaging. And when I went to go try out the Snickers thing, it wasn't using that company. So
the next one, we're doing it. The next one.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I'll have you on the next one when you do something. No. Okay, Elias, thank you so much. You're not really allowed to say this, and some of our guests are still here in the green room, but I believe we saved the best for last. And so, Gwen, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Thank you. That's a lot of pressure, Bonin. I'm Gwen Whiting, and I am founder of a company called The Laundress. And it's an eco-friendly laundry, fabric care, home cleaning lifestyle brand that is 16 years old. And in 2004, we launched this brand really in all efforts not to dry clean. So we created this little niche space for ourselves. And it's funny to be in this room with all these large consumer brand companies. Because we've always been the little engine that could since 2004 as a bootstrapping startup. And last year, then we were acquired by Unilever. So I can now join the room with these other companies.
Another bootstrapping startup. But that when we talk, that's really, it's interesting because we hear a lot of people say bootstrap, but in this day and age, bootstrap is, I took an Uber to my next investor pitch, so the reality is that when you were building a business, it was on credit cards, it was on sheer will and
right.
And so what has that 16-year journey been like? And you're not new to hard times because you went through a cycle of a tough time already. Just tell us what that journey has been like as an entrepreneur.
Well, we took on a $13 billion industry with a $100,000 SBA loan. And then the next funding was all from credit cards and then bank lines and loans and everything. And so we always acted like a startup for all 15 years. That never ended. And really, just because we were acquired, we still run independently. So we're still in that bootstrap mentality of being able to pivot. We're a really lean, young team that we're it's in our DNA to always be ready and sort of looking for the next opportunity.
And you guys took a huge pivot because you guys had been planning something that was kind of your next big consumer engagement, and you pivoted, and it's been interesting, and it's worked maybe even better than what you had planned. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So 5 years ago, we opened a flagship store in Soho, New York, on Prince Street. And that was always our vision and passion, to have this one location that people could really come and understand our brand from our point of view versus on the shelf at a retailer or online. And we have a very incredible online platform, but it's nothing like being in person. So we had hired, or we were engaging with the participation agency who specializes in experiential events. And we were kind of kicking the can around between pop-up, more retail, and experience, but doing it in a real meaningful way. So while we were going through the ideation process with them, COVID's coming along, and they said, all right, let's look at this opportunity we have and talk about quick mobilizing. We put together and launched this platform called Let's Work. And it's an incredible digital series for empowering and influential women, founders and movers and shakers, and just incredible people who are 2 times a week doing guest speaking with us, incredible community on Zoom. And it's been so humbling to be in these rooms and in this event with these women. It's because it's so diverse and everyone's coming from all over the globe. We've had over 800 attendees so far. We're not even halfway through. And it's really created an incredible environment that has no barriers. So everyone can join. And if we were doing an event in New York City, we would only have a small sampling of these women and of these people engaging with us.
It's amazing. And I think that, you know, your story alone is phenomenal. And so I've found it a pleasure to get to know you. Any advice, just as an entrepreneur, last 30 seconds, advice for people changing their business in this time?
You know, your customer and your community is number one. And if you make a good product and you care about your community and you care about your product and you lead with heart and compassion, that's the best thing you can do.
I love you, Gwen. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Let's leave it at, if you care about your community. I care about my community. It's almost 7 o'clock. I always make you the singular promise that I will allow you to get out there and clap for those that are on the front line and have been for almost 2 months right now, providing the products that the people on the webcast sell, but also that we need to, to quite frankly, to stay alive. So the clapping is just about to begin. Tune in next week, please, when we are tackling the entertainment and events industry, another sector that's been hard hit. And please continue to submit your pivot stories. We can't wait to hear from you and share your stories with the world. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining tonight. Bon and bow, and I am out.